They say that only the good die young. But when it comes to medieval life, that saying is turned on its head because the average life expectancy in the Middle Ages was around 35 years old. That means that most people did not live long enough to see their 40s. So what was medieval life really like? And what is the brutal truth about medieval life that they don't teach you anywhere? You are about to find out. Welcome to my channel. And today we will take a journey back in time to uncover the harsh realities of life in the Middle Ages. From disease and famine to war and poverty, we will explore the challenges that everyday people faced during this period and learn why so many of them died before they even reached the age of 40. Make sure to stay until the end of the video to discover the shocking facts about medieval life that most people don't know. So grab a cup of tea or maybe a tankard of ale and join us as we delve into the past. When you think of the Middle Ages, images of knights in shining armor, fair maidens, and majestic castles may spring to mind. But life in medieval Europe was far from the romanticized version often portrayed in popular culture. In fact, for most people, medieval life was a struggle for survival. During the Middle Ages, which lasted from the 5th to the 15th century, Europe experienced significant social, economic, and technological changes. The fall of the Roman Empire led to the emergence of new kingdoms and a feudal system that dominated much of Europe. While kings and queens held ultimate authority, their power was limited by the influence of the nobility who controlled vast estates and wielded significant wealth and power. Medieval society was largely agrarian, with most people working as farmers. Life for farmers was tough, and the work was backbreaking. They spent their days planting and harvesting crops, taking care of livestock, and performing other essential tasks to keep their families and communities fed. However, despite their hard work, famines were common due to factors such as crop failure, droughts, and the lack of food storage and distribution systems. When food was scarce, people were forced to eat whatever they could find, including uncooked or spoiled food, which led to widespread malnutrition and disease. One of the most devastating diseases that affected medieval Europe was the Black Death, also known as bubonic plague. It is believed that the plague arrived in Europe through trading ships from Asia, where it had already caused widespread devastation. The disease spread rapidly throughout the continent, killing millions of people in just a few years. The death toll was so high that it led to significant social and economic upheaval, including labor shortages, economic instability, and widespread panic and superstition. Some people believed that the plague was a punishment from God, while others blamed Jewish communities, whom they accused of poisoning wells to spread the disease. Another deadly disease that plagued medieval Europe was leprosy, a chronic infectious disease that can cause the destruction of nerves, limbs, and facial tissue. Leprosy was highly stigmatized, and those who contracted the disease were often shunned and isolated from society. People with leprosy were forced to live in colonies outside of towns and villages, and they were forbidden from practicing their religion or interacting with their families and friends. To make matters worse, during the Middle Ages, medical knowledge was limited and treatments for diseases were often ineffective or even harmful. Many doctors believed that illness was caused by an imbalance of the four humors, which were thought to be the essential elements of the body: blood, phlegm, yellow, and black bile. To restore balance, doctors recommended treatments such as bloodletting, leeching, and the use of herbal remedies. Unfortunately, these treatments often did more harm than good, and sometimes even resulted in death. In addition to disease, another threat to life during the Middle Ages was war. Medieval Europe was a violent place, and warfare was frequent. Conflicts between kings, queens, and nobles were common, as were battles between European nations. The Hundred Years' War between England and France, which lasted from 1337 to 1453, was one of the longest and most brutal conflicts in medieval history. The war resulted in the deaths of millions of people and had a devastating impact on both countries. While life in the Middle Ages was difficult for everyone, it was especially challenging for women. Medieval society was patriarchal, and women were often seen as inferior to men. They were expected to be subservient to their fathers, husbands, or male religious figures, and were denied access to education, property ownership, and political participation. Women's roles were limited to domestic duties such as cooking, cleaning, and child-rearing, and they were also expected to be chaste and obedient. Any woman who did not conform to these standards was often ostracized by society and labeled a witch. So you might wonder, Given all these hardships, why didn't people just try to improve their lives and change things? Well, it's important to remember that life in the Middle Ages was shaped by a number of factors, including religious beliefs, social norms, and the lack of individual rights and freedoms. People were expected to follow the rules and customs of their society, and question authority was often seen as dangerous. For example, questioning the authority of the church or the nobility could result in severe punishments, including fines, imprisonment, or even execution. Additionally, the feudal system that dominated medieval Europe contributed to the acceptance of social hierarchy and limited opportunities for advancement. Peasants were born into their social class, and it was difficult to move up the social ladder. This lack of mobility meant that people were often resigned to their fate and saw little hope for a better future. Despite the challenges and hardships they faced, the people of the Middle Ages were not without hope. They developed art, literature, and music that expressed their faith, love, and joy. They built magnificent cathedrals and castles that stand as testaments to their ingenuity and creativity. And they developed innovative technologies that helped improve their lives, such as the heavy plow, which made farming more efficient, and the watermill, which helped grind grain and power other machinery. Overall, life in the Middle Ages was a complex and challenging experience. While it is true that most people did not live to see their 40s, it's important to remember that every era has its own struggles and triumphs. By understanding the hardships and achievements of the people who lived during this period, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the world we live in today and the progress that has been made over the centuries. Now it's time to test your knowledge. How much do you remember about medieval life? Take our quiz and find out whether you are a true history buff or need to brush up on your facts. Click on the first option to play the quiz. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating historical content. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. We hope you've enjoyed learning about life in the Middle Ages and the challenges that everyday people faced during this period. Remember, the hardships and achievements of the past have shaped the world we live in today. And by understanding history, we can better appreciate the progress that has been made and the challenges that still remain. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. We would love to hear your thoughts and comments on medieval life and the challenges that people faced during this era. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our latest videos. We have a lot of fascinating content planned, including more stories about medieval life and other historical periods. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.